Hey everyone, it's Kabir here. So in last session, we have understood what is variables, why we have to create the variables, how internally it is going to perform some operations when you declare the variables, right? Now, whenever you are going to print some values from that particular variable, like for example, now you are storing var status equals to true. Now this true you wanted to print out, right? Then you are using a predefined function. What is that? Nothing but console.log. So what is the use of that particular console of .log? So what internally happens when you try to print some values which is stored in status, right? Status variable. Now there are something like let and const that we'll be seeing in the further sessions. So as of now, I hope you guys are clear with this particular concept. Now today we are going to understand a new concept called functions. Now what is function? So this is the syllabus. The people who are new to our sessions, they can refer this particular topics which we are going to cover, right? So now I wanted to explain you something like new called function. So let me create a new file known as function.js. Now we are going to understand the concept called function. Now why we have to create the function, what is function, all that we will be seeing here, right? Now just consider guys, now I have some bunch of names, right? Now I wanted to declare each and every name in some variable. So for example, I'm saying var name1 equals to Kabir. In the same way, I have one more variable called var name2 equals to something like Santosh. Then we have one more var name3 equals to something like Zoya. Let me take one more var name equals to something like Samir, and var name equals to something like Zia. Now I have declared some variables like it should be name 4 and it should be name 5. So totally I have declared the 5 variables and I am storing the values like Kabir, Santosh, Zoya, Samir and Sia. Now I wanted to print this right now. As of now, we know that if you wanted to print these values, for that we have something like console.log. Okay. Now here I'm going to say it's like name 1, right? In the same way, I wanted to print all this entire values. So just I will be copying everything, paste, enter, paste. Now I'm just going to change name from 2 and it would be 3, 4, 5, right? Now if you execute it, so let's try to execute it. So how we have to execute? Just open terminal. Once you have opened your terminal, now you have to type a command, and that command is nothing but your node and file name. So node, what is the file name? Function. Now you are able to see the values which we wanted to print, right? Now we have printed this one time. Now just consider this is your file. Now you have to use the same thing in multiple places. So what you have to do? Now you have to copy these lines, right? You have to print one more time. So I'm just printing one more time. Like this, you have to use in multiple places. Just consider you have to use the same logic, the same print statement in 5 places. So this is a 1, this is a 2, and something here 3, something 4, and something like 5. Now if you execute it, now you are able to see everything but the 5 times, right? So in between we can keep something like console and we can divide, but now the 5 names which you have declared, that is printing 5 times, means you are rewriting the same logic because you wanted the same logic in some other place as well. Now this is not good, right? Now as of now here you are writing just 5 statement and you are reusing it. I mean not reusing, but you are using in multiple places. So what is the, how much lines of code you are writing? This is the 5 and more 4, nothing but 25 lines of code you are writing. In the same way, the same code if you wanted to write in 100 places, then 100 into 5 means you have to write 500 lines. You don't want it to write same kind of lines, right? Or else just consider these are the 5 statements. Now instead of 5 statements you have 100 statements. Now that 100 statement you are writing in 100 places. So that will be like how much lines of code you have to write totally 100 into 100. That is nothing but 10,000 times, right? Now to overcome this kind of problem, they have come up with a concept called function. Now what is a function? Function is a block, one kind of block. In that block, you are going to write some code, the code which you wanted to use in multiple places. Now once you wrote that code in that block, now if you wanted to use the same code in some other place, then you will not rewrite that code, you will just call that block. So you're writing one time and you're calling one time, so calling only will take only one sentence, right? So you are reusing the logic which you already wrote in that block. Now for example, mm, I am writing a statement, like I'm writing some 100 lines of statement in a block. Now this same 100 lines of statement I wanted to use in some other place. So what is the first choice? The first thing is nothing but I have to write this 100 places, I mean 100 lines of code in another place also. In the same way, I need that same 100 lines of code in third place. Then again, I have to go there and I have to write these 100 lines. So totally I am writing 300 times, right? But what function is telling you have to write only one time. Okay, now you wrote 100 times, 100 lines of code. Now you wanted to use the same code in some other place. Now instead of writing the same line of code, just call that block. So calling of block will take one line. So it's 101. Now you are writing in one more place. So just call that same block. So it will take one, two lines. So totally you are writing one, not two lines. But in the first approach, you have to write 300 lines. So which is the better, one, not two or 300? So obviously it's a one, not two line. So what is a function? Function is a collection of statements, some collection of statement which is used to perform some action. Now you are going to perform some action. So what is the action we have performed? The action of printing the names. Okay, the printing the names of a persons, that is called action. So in the same way, function is a collection of some statements which is used to do a particular action. And why we go for function? To reuse the code. Now if you wanted to achieve reusability, then you have to go with the concept called function. Now how we have to define a function? First we have to write a function keyword. Now this is called a keyword. What is the meaning of a keyword? Keyword is nothing but it's already some meaning has been defined for that word. Now whenever you see function, right, in browser you have an engine which is going to execute your code, JavaScript code. Now whenever you write a function in your file, it will understand by seeing this keyword, yeah, it is a function. Now for this particular function you have to give some name. So like I am giving some name like emp data, means employee data. Now to make it function, we have to give open parenthesis and the close parenthesis. Now this denotes a function and you have to start with a curly braces and end with a curly braces. Now this particular thing is called a block, function block or a function body, right? Now you have to, this is the syntax. We have to follow this syntax, right? Now if you wanted to define a function, you have to write first keyword known as function, right? Then you have to give the name for that function. That is your wish, whatever name you wanted to give. And but the function keyword should be the same, it should be a function because it is a predefined. Then you have to end with, I mean start with parenthesis and end with parenthesis, opening parenthesis and closing parenthesis. And you have to start the block with open curly braces and end curly braces. Now this particular thing is called your function. Now whatever code you wanted to reuse, that code should be written inside this curly braces here, and that thing is called statement. So for example, I wanted to print something, that one. So let me consider some var name1 equals to Kabir. In the same way, I'm taking one more where name2 equals to something like Zoya. Var name3 equals to something like Samir. Okay, now I have to took this three name. Now I wanted to print. So console.log of name1. In the same way, I wanted to print other two names, we have to repeat the same sentences. So I will be just saying name2 and this is the name3. Right. Now we have defined some statements, right? These are called statements. And this statement should be inside a block. Now what is a function? Function is a collection of statements. So this is the collection of statement which is used to do a particular task. So what task we are doing here? We are just printing the names. So this is a task, right? Function is a collection of statement which is used to do a particular task. Now why we go for this function? To reusable. Now if I execute this particular thing, nothing will be executed because we have just defined the function but we didn't call. Now you wanted to execute this particular statements, so first of all we have to call this function. So how can you call this function? Just you have to write the name of function. What is the name? Emp data is name, and you have to give parenthesis, opening and closing parenthesis. Now this particular way is called calling of your function. Now this is called defining the function. Now you have defined the function. Now here you're calling the function, right? Now if you save and execute node function, now you got the name like Kabir, Zoya and Samir. Now let me write one more console dot log, and this time I'm going to say just something like this. So just to divide, now we have called one time. Now in the same way I wanted to call more two times. So what I will be doing, just enter emp data one more time, emp data, and you have to save it, execute. Now you got Kabir, Zoya, Samir. Then if you go up, Kabir, Zoya, Samir, Kabir, Zoya, Samir. Now this is what we are getting the outputs. It means the same code I wanted to execute more two times. So instead of writing that same code once more, we are just calling this particular block, nothing but this particular function. So by this what we are getting a reusability. Just guys understand the concept why we have to define the function, because whenever you are going to write some logics, right, then you are going to come across where you have to define the functions. So there you need to understand according to requirement, should I define a function or I should not define a function. That decision if you wanted to take, first of all you have to understand why we have to define a function. If you know this answer, then according to your requirement you can easily judge what you have to do. So always try to understand concept, then how to apply that concept, right? Now what is the concept? Function is a concept, right? Functions, why we have to go for the function? Whenever we need to write some code and that code is going to be used in multiple places. Now to write that code, I have like to write that particular requirement, I have wrote some 100 lines. Now this 100 lines I have to use in multiple places. So instead of writing these 100 lines in multiple places, why I can't define a function and write these 100 lines in that function, and wherever it is required I will just be calling that function. So it will reduce your effort as a developer, right? And your performance of your application is going to increase, because less statements, the more fast your application is going to be. So the simple, if anyone asks you what is a function, function is a collection of statement which is used to do a particular task or particular action. Why we go for a function? For the reusability. That's the one thing. Now in the same way, console.log, this log is the right, this is a function. Now this is a predefined function. Now what this function is doing, it is printing the value which is stored in this name1, right? Now to print the value from name1, what internally we have to do, we have to go to the memory, we have to check what address has stored in this name1, we have to go that memory location, address location, then we have to see what data is there, we have to pick up that data and we have to print. So this many tasks you have to do, this many lines of code you have to write, and already they wrote these lines of code. Now you need not write explicitly anything, you have to just call that function. Here you are just calling the function. internally it is doing some operations, right? In the same way, this function is user defined function, means you are defining the functions, you are writing some steps. Now I am calling this function, right? So I'm not writing the same code, already the code has written, I'm just utilizing that code. So that is the function. Now this is called user defined function, and this log is called predefined function. It is nothing but the function which is already written by the JavaScript people. Okay, so that is the concept of function. Now function concept will be very important. Now you will come across many things, right? Now in further sessions we are using this term in many times, so you have to understand this particular function. Now if you wanted to do some task, right, like I'm taking function, I want to add some numbers, so I will say sum, and I will give I mean starting and closing parenthesis, and I'm writing some blocks, means opening the curly braces and closing the curly braces. So I have defined a function. Now I wanted to do operation, addition operation. So we know addition operation is nothing but C equals to A plus B. It means we have to store some value in A, some value in B. Now we have to add, then we are going to get some solution. That solution we have to keep in C. So once we kept in C, then I will be writing console dot log of C. Right? Now here we didn't define any values that we have to pass, right? So what we are passing in A or B, we don't know. So for example, I told var A equals to 2. Then I'm going to say something like var B equals to 5, right? Right. Now if I call this function sum, that's it. Now what will be the answer? Everybody knows what will be the answer. Now we got the answer like 7, right? Because 2 plus 5. Now I am executing the same function one more time. Again I got the same thing, means how many times I'm calling the function, that time it is returning the same value. But my requirement is something, I don't want the same value, I don't want to pass same input. Now here we are passing 2 and 5 as an input. Now every time I don't want it to pass same input, I wanted to pass my own values, means it should be dynamic. So first of all, I have to remove these statements. Now I have to find some way where I can pass some values, right? Some values to this A and this B. Now, if you wanted to pass that values, first of all, you have to understand from where you are calling this function. Now, here is the line where you are calling the function. Means if you tell this function in some way that I want the addition of 2 plus 5, and you are going to say for this function, I want the addition of 1 plus 5, right? Then it is going to perform. But how can you tell that thing you have to understand. For such problem, a new concept has been arised called arguments. Now what is arguments? Something you are passing inside this parenthesis are called arguments. Now I am passing something like A comma B, right? Now I'm passing something called A comma B. So anyhow, we have to pass some value for this A, some values for B. Now you are telling to the user, means the person who is going to call this function, whatever additions you wanted to do for any values, you have to pass that values in this particular function whenever you are calling. So if you are calling here, what addition you want, what numbers, means which numbers addition you want 2 comma 5. Now this particular 2 will go inside this A, and this particular 5 will go inside this B. Now so it will be 2 plus 5. In the same way, I want 1 plus 9. Now this 1 will go in this A and 9 will go in this B. Now this will be temporary, and this process of passing the values are called arguments. This is an argument. You are passing a arguments, right? Now if you save and if you go terminal and execute, now you are able to see the values like 7 and 10. Now this process is called dynamically you are passing the values for that function, right? Now this is how you have to pass. Now just consider I gave here something like C and I have gave something like here D, right? Now if I run this, so what will be the value? Anyone can guess? Just pause the video and just search what would be the answer. Now you got some kind of error. Now why you guys are getting the error? Because this C and D is this values you are passing, right? 2 and 5 to C and D, but you are not utilizing anywhere in here, right? That's why it is giving error. Now instead of C, I will be taking something like X and comma Y, right? Now we want to tell this function somehow this whatever value you are passing in the X, pass that value to A. Whatever value you are passing this 5 to, means 5 you are passing 5 means it is going in Y. So in some way you have to tell pass that value from Y to B. So if you wanted to tell, just you have to say here where A equals to X. In the same way you have to say where B equals to Y. Now you are saying the value which is in X pass to A, the value which is in Y pass to B. Now it is moving from left to right, from Y to A, from Y to B, from X to A, from Y to B. Now if you execute the same thing, now I'm changing the value, so I will make it as a 12 and I will make it as 11, right guys? Now we got 17 and 20. Now these are the three ways where we pass the value. In first way, we have declared a static values. Means if you call 10 times the function, it will give the same result. Now in second way, we have substituted arguments variables and our actual variables are same. So we need not to tell explicitly. In third approach, we give some different argument variables and here we have different actual variables. Now here we have to say to this function, we have to tell that whatever the value we are passing in X should be passed to A. Whatever value we are passing to the B, I mean Y, we have to pass that to the B. So this is a third approach. Now this is the concept of your function, right? Yeah, fine. Now this is called a function. Okay, fine guys. Now let us understand one more concept called array. So I'm writing something like array.js. Now just think I wanted to store some values, right? So I will say name1. So I will be declaring like var name1 equals to Kabir. Right? In the same way, I am declaring one more variable var name2 equals to something like Sai. Okay. Now here I have declared two variables and I am storing some values like Kabir and Sagi. In the same way, just consider I wanted to declare 100 names. So it should be something like var name3, var name4, var names, something like 100 variables, 100 names I wanted to store. Means you have to create 100 variables, right? In same ways, tomorrow someone will come and say, I wanted to store 10,000 names. Then how many variables you have to create? Obviously 10,000 variables, right? Now it is a painful job. So to overcome such here, what is the problem? Like in one variable, we are able to store only one value. Now if you store something like this, now this is not valid. Okay. Now this is not valid. So only one variable you can store in one, only one value you can store in one variable. Now, if you get a requirement where you have to store multiple values in one variable, then you have to go with the concept called array. Now, how array looks, just you have to say var names and you have to give equal in the same way, but here you have to say open square bracket and close square bracket. Now this particular notation is called array. Now what is array? Array is nothing but collection of values, means you are collecting the values in one variable. Now here I can store multiple values, like I will say Kabir, then I can say comma, then I can say something like Santosh, comma, then I can say something like Jia, Sneha, comma, something like Priya. Okay, now what I'm doing, I'm storing multiple values in one variable, and this particular way of storing the data is called arrays. Now array is one of the data structure, means you are storing data in structured way. So from one variable to the another variable, I mean one value to the another value, we have to separate with the comma. So this is a one value, so after comma it is going to consider next value, it is going to consider third value. Now I wanted to store some boolean value, so I will be saying true. Now I wanted to store something like a float, something like 98.99. Now sometimes I get requirement where I can store just a number like 100. Now you are able to store multiple values plus different types of data also. Now this is a string, now this true is your boolean, this is decimal, and this is your number, right? Now this is the concept of array. Now your array concept in JavaScript is little bit different from the array concept in your Java or C sharp. In Java and C sharp you cannot store different type of data in one array. Like here we are storing string, boolean, decimal, number, but there you have to declare an array where it can store only same type of data. It should be string, or it should be integers, or it should be something boolean, or it should be something like decimal. There we won't call it decimal, we call it as a float. So we have little changes, but the concept is same. What is the concept? In one variable you are storing multiple data, that is the concept, but the way we are using the concept is little bit different. Okay, now I wanted to print this particular name, so what I will be doing, I will be just say console dot log of names. Now if you save and come here and just say node, you have to give your function name, I mean file name, node array. Now you are able to print everything, right? Kabir, Santosh, Jia, Sneha, Priya, true, 98, 99, and it is printing in the array, right? Now how can we differentiate one value to the another value? So something we have like index in this array. Now they are going to store in some positions, right? This is the first position, second position, third position. Like this, we have to define some positions for each and every element. So in array, the positions of the element, the position of the values are going to start from 0. So the first position is called 0, next is called 1, then it is called 2, then it is called 3, 4, 5, and so on. Now this particular things, this is called one element, this is called next element. Now here we are saying values, but in the terms of arrays we have to say elements. So this is the first element. So what is the index of first element? This is the 0. What is the index of second element? Index is nothing but the position. So the position starts from 0, not from the 1. So 0th position, 1st position, second position, third position, fourth position, like that. Okay, and here we won't call it as a values, instead of that we call it as a elements. So the concept is same, but the name what we use in different concepts will be different, so we have to use that particular terms. So here we are going to call this term as an element. Now this is an array, so how we have to define the array? It is simple, where some name, so I am going to give something name like students, okay, equals to, how can we denote this is an array? Open your square bracket and close your square bracket. This particular notation is called array. This is called syntax. Okay, now I want to access exact this value. Zia value. So first of all, we have to know this particular element, which is Zia, is present in which index. So it is 0, 1, and it is a 2. So what you have to do, just you have to say console dot log. You have to give the name of your array like names. After that, you have to give square bracket and you have to mention your index. Index is 2. Now if we execute it, now you got Zia. In the same way, you want priya value, right? This particular element you wanted to print. So first of all, you have to know in which index this particular element is stored. So 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. If you say it as 4 and if you comment this particular thing and save it and execute, now you got priya. Now this is how you have to use the concept of array. Now when you have to go for array, now if you wanted to store multiple values or multiple elements in one variable, okay, now you don't want it to declare multiple variables, you wanted to declare only one variable and you wanted to store all the values in that variable, then go for your array. Now array is your one of the data structure in JavaScript. Now what internally happens, just see. Now just consider we have this as a memory. You have some memory in your system. Now whenever you are going to define a, it will create some variable. I mean, whenever you are going to create a variable, it is going to create some memory. It will allocate some space. Then again you will create one more variable. So one more memory. So one more memory, one more memory. Like this, if you create 100 variables, then 100 memory will be created. So memory for 100 variables will be located. Now, what is the problem? You are unnecessarily wasting your memory. Now, just consider if you use array, what will happen? Now you are going to create some array. Now this is your memory. Now if you create an array here, now simply it is going to create some kind of array. Now here you are going to store your values. So this is like Kabir, then you have something like Santosh, then someone like Zia, then you have something like Rajesh, like that. Now this is the internally what happens. So the memory will be created only for the one time. Now how can you represent this and this element? How can you differentiate? Just simply using the index. The index will start from 0. So for this first element, index will be 0. For second, it will be 1, then 2, 3, and so on. Now that is the concept of your array. Now just consider we have some kind of array and some elements we have. Now I wanted to insert one more element in the last position. So for that we have a predefined function called push. Now push is a function. What do you mean by function? It is going to contain some statements and it is going to perform some kind of action, right? It is going to do some kind of task. So what task it is going to do? If you use push, it is going to take one input, right? One argument. That or whatever argument you are going to pass to that push, right? It is going to store that argument in the last place. Now this is the last, 100 is the last. So it is going to add after 100. Now just consider names dot push, the function name. This is a function. So we have to call that function. So this is how we have to call. And you wanted to pass something like 200, right? Now you have to save. Now what we will do, we will uncomment this and we will comment this. So before we are printing the values elements of array. So this will print before adding 200 and this will print after adding the 200. So let us see how it is going to be. We have to save, come here, node array. See, this is the first array before adding 200. Now we didn't add this output we got because of this statement. Now if you come down, Now you got this particular array because of this particular statement, and this particular statement is executed after executing this particular statement. Means you are pushing some variable in this particular array. You have to give the array name dot push. So 200 has been pushed in the last one. Now in the same way, you wanted to delete something, right? Now you wanted to delete this 200. So what you will be doing, just say names dot pop. Pop is one more predefined function which is going to just remove the last element from your array. Now as of now, last element is nothing but your 200, right? Now I wanted to remove. Here you need not to pass anything because it will remove last element. So you have to just say save, come down and execute it. So you have to print, right? So after removing, I wanted to print. So I have printed. So let me do one thing. Let me write something like console.log. Save it. Come here. Copy this particular thing. Now save it. So now just to differentiate, so I'm going to execute the function. Now this is the first time we don't have 200, right? Now this is because of this particular statement. Now then we are adding 200, right? So if you come down, 200 is added. Now we are removing a statement, right? So if you come down, 200 is removed. Now I wanted to remove this 100 as well. So what I will be doing, just copy these statements and you have to print. So we are telling name dot pop. Already 200 is removed. Now the last element is 100. Now 100 will be removed. Now if you execute, now 100 is removed in the last. Now if you wanted to remove this, then again you have to paste. Now push is going to add a new element in the last place of your array, and you have to pass as an argument what value you wanted to push, means you wanted to add. Now if you wanted to remove the last element, you have to just say pop, and you need not to pass any value because anyhow it is going to remove your last element, right? Now in the same way, you wanted to add something in the first, like instead of last you wanted to add something in the first. So for that you have one more function which is predefined function, means already the logic for that function has been written. You have to just utilize. So you have to call the array name names dot and it is unshift, don't shift. Now here you have to pass some values. So I'm passing something like 500. Now I'm going to print the array. So if you wanted to print array, just we are going to copy these two statements, save it, come here and execute. Now if you see, the 500 is added before Kabir. So unshift is going to add the value in the start and your push is going to add value in the last. In the same way, you wanted to delete your first element. Now I wanted to delete 500. So for that you have a predefined function called shift. So just you have to copy this thing. You have to paste here. Now this time it is shift and you should not mention any value because it is going to remove the first element. Now if you come down and if you execute it, now your first element has been removed. Now if you wanted to remove Kabir, then what you have to do, you have to just paste this line of code once more. So if you have pasted, save it, come here and execute. Now Kabir also removed. Now the Santosh is the first element. So now these are the predefined functions of arrays. Not only this, they have provided bunch of functions. Okay guys, now you have to learn each and every function according to the requirement. We are not going to cover everything in first shot. So we are going to learn everything slowly. Okay, now as of now, I'm going to tell you these three things. I mean, these four functions. The functions are nothing but your push, pop, unshift, shift, right? Now, what we have learned up to now, we learned what is function, why we have to go for the function. Then we learned something like array, why we have to go for array. What is the problem? Defining multiple variables, right? Focus on concept, why we have to go, what is that concept. If you can understand this very clearly, programming will be very easy. Okay, so this is the thing. Now just consider one more thing. So what I'm going to do in this first dot, okay, let it be, I'm going to create one more file called object.js something. Okay, now just consider array. Now I wanted to define some variables, right? Some values. So I have something like 10 to 15 values. So instead of creating multiple variable, I thought, okay, I will go for array. So where some kind of data equals to, this is the array. Now I can define multiple values. So I told something like here Kabir. Then I told something like true. Then I told something like 100, something like TCS. Then I have told something like Maharashtra. Then something like Mumbai. Now this Maharashtra should be string, so I will keep it as a string. So I have told something, some values. Now by seeing this, can you judge what this particular element is going to tell about? Means this is a Kabir, right? So is this the name of a person or a name of any company or name of any city? Can you judge it? Can you find the that particular thing from this array? It's very difficult. Now I'm saying something like 100. So what is 100? Now 100 is like his bike number, or it is anything, something like he got some marks in some subject, or it is a ID. We are not sure. So this information is not properly structured, right? Now if you wanted to structure this information properly, like you wanted to say Kabir is the name of a person, his married status is like true, means like he's married, and you wanted to say something like TCS, means he works in company like TCS, he's from Maharashtra, and the city in which he lives is nothing but Mumbai. Now you wanted to mention it very clearly, then you have to go with the concept called object. Now how we have to define the object? You have to say where, you have to give the name, how we are giving the name to a variable and the array and the function. In the same way, you have to give the name to the object. What is object? Object is a one of the data structure. How array is a data structure, in the same way object is also a data structure. So here I am going to say something like information, some name I am giving. Now how can we denote the object? Now we are denoting array with the square brackets, right? Equals to, and object will be denoted using the curly braces. Open the curly and close the curly, and whatever you are writing inside this curly braces are called properties. Now I wanted to define the information about a person whose name is Kabir. So you have to say name, and you have to say the value should be Kabir. Now this is called key and this is called value, and together both are called property, and it is same like attribute. In HTML we'll provide attribute. So how we will provide attribute? In the pair of key and value. In the same way, object also will be provided in the key and value pair, and entirely this thing is called property. So what is object? Object is a data structure and it is a collection of some properties. Now, how you can define one property to the another property, how you can differentiate using the comma, right? Now, I want to say something like Marshall status, right? Or whether he's married or not. So married. So it's like false because I'm not married. So this is a false, right? This is a Boolean value. Now, in the same way, I wanted to say company, the company in which he works. Like, for example, I am saying like TCS, right? In the same way, I wanted to give the information about that particular person, his state, like his live in which state. He lives in something like Maharashtra. Okay, in which city? So I will be giving city. Now I will be saying something like Mumbai. Now this is also a data structure and this is also a data structure. Now this data structure is called object and this data structure is called array. Now here we are able to store multiple values in one variable, right? Where we don't get any requirement where we have to find exact information of the elements. But now you got a requirement where you have to find exact information of that particular elements. Then instead of array, we will go for object. Now here we can clearly define the information of that values, like Kabir is the name of person, he is not married, and the company in which he works is nothing but TCS, state is nothing Maharashtra, and city where he lives is nothing but Mumbai. So this particular thing is called object. So how we have to define the object? We have to say where, we have to give some name equals to open the curly braces and close the curly braces. And whatever you are going to write in this curly braces are called properties. So how many properties I have defined here? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So one property to the another property. How you can differentiate? Using the comma, right? Now, what property contains? It contains key and value. Values is actual data. Now, if you wanted to refer this data, you require some key. That key is called name. So we can clearly say, okay, name is nothing but Kabir is nothing but name of that person. TCS is nothing but the person who works in some company called TCS and he lives in state called Maharashtra and city Mumbai. So you are clearly able to define what is object, what is array. Now, whenever you get some requirement, first of all, you have to think which data structure suits for your requirement. It suits array or it suits object. That you have to differentiate. When you will differentiate that if you know the concept. Now you know the concept when we have to go for the array and when we have to go for the object. Now in JavaScript or React, maximum you are going to use this particular object. Now if you wanted to pass the data from your client to server, then you will use this particular notation. Then you will use JSON. Here you are using normal JavaScript object. What is the difference between your JSON and your object? Everything will be same. Here we are writing names, right? Even this name should be string. That is a mandatory. Now that is the one difference that you have in JSON and your JavaScript object. So we will be learning in the future sessions what is the exactly difference. So as of now, remember this thing, right? Okay, fine. We have defined the object. Now I wanted to print this particular object. So what I will be doing, console.log. Now just type the name of your object is nothing but information. Now if you save it, and even if you type this array as well, let us see what is the difference exactly. Now here I am going to say array, so nothing but data. Now here you are printing the array and here you are printing the object. So let's see how it is going to look like. Sorry, it's not object, right? Let's see what error we got. Hmm. Now, what is telling that we wrote it false, right? False. It is small f, not capital F. So save it. Now we got the output. Now if you see, this is your array. Now this is printed because of this particular statement. Here you are printing array. Now if you come down, now here you are printing object. This is your object. This is the curly braces object and this is the square bracket. In array you have the elements. This is are called properties. So different data structure have different terms. Here we call elements, here we are calling properties. Here it is a key value, here just we have to mention the values. Now this is the object concept, and this object is very important, guys. We will be doing so many operations on this particular object and it is very useful. You have to understand everything about object. Now here we just understood how can we define an object. Now just consider I want to add one more property inside this object. So how can we add? So that is very simple. So I'm going to comment this particular thing. Now if you wanted to add a property inside this object, so first you have to write the object name. So information. Here we don't have any predefined functions. You have to use just dot operator and you have to add a property. So what is property? Key and value. So you have to give some key. So here I'm going to give some keys, right? So I wanted to add something like ID, right? So I will be saying ID equals to, you wanted to give some ID, so I will be saying something like 101. So object name dot the property which you wanted to add, what is the key that of that property, ID, and equals to, and the value for that particular key. Now if you save it and if you print this particular object once more, so what will be the output? Now ID should be added in that object as a new property. Now ID is added because we are adding the ID. Now if you wanted to add any new properties, this is the way how we can add. Now here the means it should be first, last, middle, that doesn't matter. Property should be there because if you wanted to access any particular property, you are going to access through the its key. Okay, how can we access? Just see. Now I want to access his name. So what I will be doing, just I will be saying console dot log. You have to give the object name information dot, you have to access any one of the properties, so you have to give the key of that property. So I want to access this particular property. So what is the key? Key is name, so just dot name. That's it. Now I wanted to access city as well, so what I will be doing, just copy. First you have to give the object dot what is the key. So what is the key this time? Key is city. That's it. Now if you come here and if you execute, now you got the Kabir and Mumbai. Now this is how you can access the value of a property. Now this is how you can add a property. Now just consider I wanted to update the value from Mumbai to Pune. So what you will be doing, you have to just say object name dot which property you wanted to update, that property key like city equals to Pune. If you save and if you print the same thing here, now the value should be updated. Now the value is updated to Pune, right? Now you might get confused. Inserting a property and updating the property have the same syntax, right? Now here we are inserting, which is information.add id, information.id. id is nothing but the key and 101 is nothing but the value. Now here we are updating where the key is city and the value is Pune. The syntax looks same, right? So when it is going to perform insertion and when it is going to perform updation, a difference is very easy, a simple difference. If already the property is present, then it is going to do updation. If the property is not present, then it is going to do insertion. So in this case, we don't have any ID before, right? That's why it has been inserted. Now in this case, CT was already present, right? That's why it has been updated. Now that is the difference between your insertion and updation of your object. And it is very, very important, guys, insertion and updation. Now, if you wanted to remove any kind of property, so for that, you have to say delete, right? You have to use the keyword delete space. You have to give something like information, means your object name, dot which property you wanted to delete. I wanted to delete ID. That property key you have to mention. That's it. Now if you print this one again once more, and if you save it and come here, now if you now your ID is deleted. Now if you wanted to remove this married, right, the married one, so what you will be doing, just come here, just copy this code, paste. Now what you wanted to delete, instead of ID, married, save it, come here and execute. Now if you see, married is deleted, name, company, state, city. We have only 4 properties because married has been deleted. In the previous one we have married as well, married property, right? This is the married property. Now this is how you can delete, this is how you can update, this is how you can read, nothing but read the value, and this is how you can insert a value. Now these are the operations like we can call as CRUD operations in object data structure. Now this particular way is called object. Now this is called your array. Now in array, what we have learned, how to define array, what are the indexes. Indexes starts from 0. Don't forget, indexes start from the 0. And we have some predefined functions where we can add a new element, we can delete element from last, we can add element in the last, we can add element in the initial, and you can add an element in the you can delete the element in the for starting. If you wanted to delete any starting element, then go for the shift. Now if you wanted to add any element at a specific position, like specific position is nothing but, now this is 0 1 2 3. Now here you wanted to add some value called Adam, right? So for that, what you have to do, that you guys have to search and you have to find, and it's very easy, right? If you are not able to do, then I will be telling in the next session, which will be tomorrow. That is the one thing. Okay guys, now this is the concept of your arrays, objects, right? Functions. What is function? Now function is nothing but collection of some statements which is used to do a particular task, right? Now if you wanted to call function, just you have to call. Now how we can pass some values to this function, and passing these functions, these values are called arguments. Arguments are very important, right? Practically we saw this is the push, we are passing 200, means we are passing some argument for this particular function. Now this function is called predefined function, whereas this particular function is called user defined function, means we have defined this function, and this function is already defined by the JavaScript people. Here we are just calling that particular function, that's it. Now that is the concept of your functions, arrays and object. In arrays, we don't have only these 4 methods, we have so many methods, and there are so many important methods. But if you wanted to understand that methods, you have to learn few more concepts, right? So that we'll learning and we'll exploring that array again. So array concept is very important, right? Now this is the thing. So that's all guys for this session, and the next session will be tomorrow. Thank you guys for watching the video.